Bandits kill 40 in Kebbi, Zamfara states. Federal government disclose oppositions are sore losers. Don't compromise, NLC cautions election petition tribunal. An on story outside the shores of Nigeria, Russia launches second pre-dawn missile attack in 3 days. Details now. The World News at 12 begins with President Mohammed Buhari marking his last day in office today in concerning labor, therefore scoring his tenure and state governors low, saying they pauperized workers and inflicted hardship on Nigerians. The workers lamented the galloping inflation in the country, which had eroded the 40% pay rise recently approved by the federal government with effect from January. Last week, the government paid a 40% increase in allowance to various categories of federal workers, but labor leaders say the pay rise had been lost to inflation. The Consumer Price Index reported by the National Bureau of Statistics in March 2023 indicated that Nigeria's inflation rate accelerated to a new 17-year high of 22.04%. In 2015, when President Muhammadu Buhari took over, petrol was sold at 87 naira per litre, but it is presently dispensed at 196 naira per litre and in some instances 200 naira per litre, pending of course with a subsidy with his administration. Cooking gas prices also shot to 822 naira per litre from 256 naira in 8 years, while electricity tariffs were hiked to 68 naira per kilowatt per hour from 27 naira despite power outages. Now, minimum wage, which was increased to 30,000 naira from 18,000 naira, the workers submitted their food inflation, which skyrocketed from 9.78% to 22.72% per inflation, had eroded the increase. In order for us to actually look into this, considering the fact that today is May 1, I have on the telephone Comrade Adejimo Ismail Ishola. He is the chairman, Ratau Lagos State and PRO NLC Lagos State Council. Good afternoon and welcome to the World News at 12 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
And Voice of the People.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Today is May Day, all right? And the theme is concerning workers' rights and socio-economic justice. Do you think today's Nigerian workers have the rights? And do you think we actually have socio-economic justice?
Thank you very much. Today's celebration is unique in the sense that we Nigerian workers, we are really, passed through a lot of psychological challenge and economic hardship orchestrated by the high rise in inflation, the rise in the consumer price index, the unemployment, the insecurity, and all sorts of social vices that we have experienced. The Nigerian workers have been very committed, they have been very patient, they have been very loyal and dedicated to the oneness of Nigeria. That's why most of us believe that this time around is the right time. After the post-election, in today's celebration, we are coming with a lot of demands to the government that we're pushing the effect of this economic hardship. And I can tell you that was the reason for the choice of today's theme of celebration, which is workers' rights and socio-economic justice.
Now,
presently, there is no economic and social justice in Nigeria. The rich are continuing to be richer while the poor are continuing to be poorer. This disparity has really created a lot of social gaps and economic inequality. So, and I can tell you categorically, this gap is what necessitates the choice of today's theme, and all workers all over Nigeria are making their statement clear and bold that the government must come to their aid, must come to their plight in terms of creating palliations, allowances, and good remuneration package that can make life meaningful for an average worker.
Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has been scored low by the labor unions, saying that this administration pauperized workers and inflicted hardship on Nigerians. Now, just last week, the federal government paid a 40%, that is, there was a 40% increment on the salaries of some federal workers, but it didn't cut across board. We have the National Association of Resident Doctors who are saying they would go on strike very soon because some of the emoluments benefits and some of the payments and increments, or rather benefits that were, of course, including pensions, have not been done by the federal government. The processes have not been done by the federal government, despite several negotiations and promises from the government that that will be done. We also have private sector individuals who want to be part of the labor union, and they cannot be part because some private organizations do not want a situation where their workers are in a union and where they can express themselves if anything goes wrong. How do we correct that anomaly? Because a couple of private workers cannot talk, they can't say anything. A couple of them too are being owed salaries. Pensions are not even part of the package that is being done from the companies for them. And then, of course, we also have some sectors whereby the federal government is not including a 40% payment increase. How will this administration give itself the benefit or a tap on the shoulder that it did well when it comes to, the consistent payment of workers' salaries, and especially, considering the economic inflation policies that we're experiencing, and how a lot of food items, and not just food items, other aspects too that has to do with finance has increased, and the salaries are not meeting up with these fresh demands?
Thank you very much. What has been done by the federal government is just to come to kind of create a kind of palliative. The disparity has been there before now. If you look at the various salary scale at the federal government level, the consolidated public salary structure is the least of all the category of salary scale. People who are under this category are, living in abject poverty, and they are the core of the public, core of the civil service. So the president, in his magnanimity, sometime last year, set up a technical committee to review and harmonize all salary structure. And it is on that basis that they come up to realize that there is need to bridge this gap, this disparity that exists among the same public servants on the same category. And that is why the cost was set aside and 40% rise for workers on comps was introduced. And it is a welcome development to start with, because already inflation has chopped up this increase. Because if you look at the inflation rate now, it's at about 22 to 23%. The exchange rate now is something else. The cost of production, cost of living, and every other thing has gone up. And that is why the workers are saying that what government has introduced at the federal level is not a minimum wage. Because minimum wage increase is starting to every 4 years, government will increase. And we are waiting for next year to open up negotiation for minimum wage that will be the benchmark for all categories of workers, either in government or in private sector. But what we have today is just to pushing to bridge the gap between some category of public servants and to pushing the effect of economic hardship perpetrated by the aftermath of COVID-19 and the Ukraine war. You understand that has caused a lot of global economic recession. That's the reason why government must come in at this time. And we appreciate that gesture. And we are calling on government to be consistent in reviewing these salaries in line with the current economic reality. Because the economic reality of today is that an average worker cannot survive with what they take. And because what they take is not a take-home pay, it's just a kind of ameliorating allowance, should I call it. But it's not a wage. A living wage must be able to take care of the basic needs of workers, which is first, price of goods must be affordable. The public transportation must be subsidized. Health sector must be funded to make a kind of palliative for the workers. So also, when you look at the area of pension, most of the workers who retire recently are unable to access their pension, and what they are being paid is not even commensurate with the economic reality, and them are living in penury in abject poverty. That's why this year theme of celebration is workers' rights and socio-economic justice. And we are here at the National Stadium, Uniform, at the Uniform Stadium, right now, putting our charter of demand before the government of Lagos State and the federal government to come to the head of workers so that they can be better for us in the coming administration. Because the new government that is coming have promised a lot in terms of trying to be bargaining constantly with workers. And once they bargain with workers, there will be industrial disharmony. You understand? Mm-hmm. That is why we, the Nigerian Labour Congress, are taking the bull now to lead the struggle for both public workers and the private sectors. We are aware of all the atrocity committed in the private sector in terms of casualization and mass retrenchment of workers without compensation. This is going to be one of our cardinal agenda by ensuring that any reported case of such are being dealt with squarely. So these are many more our program for this year, and we are hoping that the government will listen and work with us to bring out a better working class and a better society.
Thank you very much, Comrade.
And egalitarian.
Thank you so much, Comrade Adejimo Ismail Ishola, for your time. I can hear at the background that the activities have already commenced. Thank you for sharing that time.
Yes, we are live at the stadium here, Unicon. The chairperson of NSC is live delivering our speech, not because of the privilege that we have discussed earlier. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done this interview because I was supposed to be with her.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, still on the world news at 12, bandits have killed at least 40 villagers in Kebbi and Zamfara states during a dawn attack on Sunday. VIP News gathered that 6 mobile policemen were among the 36 victims killed at the Dan Umaru in Zuru area of Kebbi state. Residents disclosed the funeral of 27 people had taken place while several others sustained various degrees of injuries. Dozens have also been kidnapped and hundreds of cattle rustled during the attack on neighboring villages. Also in Zamfara state, 3 people were killed in Shinkafi village. Meanwhile, the federal government and the main opposition parties clashed again yesterday over the outcome of the February 25 presidential election. The federal government took a swipe at the People's Democratic Party and Labour Party for what it described as their delusions and irritating complaints about the 2023 general election. It urged them to embrace the reality of their electoral losses, which were due to their overconfidence and complacency. The Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, said in a statement that President Muhammadu Buhari's analysis of the reasons for losing the poll by PDP and Labour Party was incontrovertible. He said the president deserved accolades for delivering the best election in Nigeria's history, arguing that the tempestuous but predictable reaction to his comments by the opposition parties have shown that they are shameless sore losers. However, Labour Party and PDP rejected the federal government's claim, saying that the election was not credible. The minister, who advised the opposition to stop their endless complaints over the polls, said their vituperations lacked justification. Now, I also have via the telephone Barrister Fred Nzako. He is a political commentator, a social affairs analyst, and of course, he's also a civic advocate, including a major economic analyst. Barrister Fred Nzako, good afternoon. Welcome to the World News at 12.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I congratulate you and other Nigerian workers.
Thank you.
On the auspicious occasion of the celebration of the Workers' Day.
Thank you so much, Barrister. Now let's look at issues in the Nigerian polity. Today is Workers' Day. I just spoke with one of the senior officials of the Nigeria Labour Congress as well as the Trade Union Congress. And of course, you can hear that there is an event going on for workers. In as much as workers try to make themselves happy today while they rest and, take a recount of how it has been operating and working in this part of the world, there are quite a number of issues that needs to be considered and looked into. Now, in as much as politics is one of the bane of every society, we need to consider the policies that makes what politics is today and how people can continue to thrive. Now, the Nigeria Labour Congress has actually made statements that it is important for the federal government to ensure that this incoming administration looks into the plight of Nigerians and see how they can put in place policies and create a working, enabling environment when everyone gets to benefit. Now, we now have a reaction with the federal government in person of Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed. At this time, considering how strenuous things has been post-election, one would think that the president's camp will try to solicit for peace, ask everyone who has their agitations, those who are not comfortable with how things turned out, to just be patient and wait on how the election petition tribunal proceeding will go. But it seems that the federal government telling people not to heat up the polity, not to incite the polity, are the ones actually making inciting statements and statements that could actually set up agitations. Now, this is the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, saying that the president has already expressed himself on what he thinks about the just concluded elections and that the elections were the best so far. Also saying that the opposition political parties, specifically naming the Labour Party and the PDP, should go and rest, that their complaint lacks no justification. Barrister Fred Nzako, do you think that the complaints of the opposition political parties concerning how these elections went have no moral standing and have no justification, like Mohammed just stated?
I can tell you very easily that every discerning Nigerian knows and the kind of statement that can come out from Alhaji Lai Mohammed. I can tell you that most discerning Nigerians are not disappointed by his statement because he has a history, he has a record of unbridled propaganda, and even when such propaganda is not necessary. Alhaji Lai Mohammed, he himself knows that he has that penchant for sometimes very annoying and unexpected propaganda. And I think he derives joy doing that. He has also alluded to that fact when he went for screening on the floor of the Senate. So we are not surprised that Alhaji Lai Mohammed will say so. As a matter of fact, if he didn't toe that line, that is when we will be surprised that we will not agree that it came from Alhaji Lai Mohammed. So such statement that came from him, we are exactly the kind of statement that we expect to come from him. As unfortunate as it may sound, that is Alhaji Lai Mohammed, and at his age, I don't think there is anything we can do about it to change him. You don't change the usage of your right hand in old age. So, but most important thing and the assurance we have is that we thank God and we thank those who designed the structure of our democracy, that there is time for everything. On May 29, President Muhammad Buhari will go home with Alhaji Lai Mohammed. So whatever they think about how they had run Nigeria will be left to them. And by now, when they look back, they will now see a lot of areas where they made mistakes. By then, it would have been too late. But what is important is that a new government is coming. And the new government that is coming is the one that I believe is aware of the challenges of today and the need to bring Nigeria out of the current doldrum. And I have a very strong conviction that the president-elect, when he is sworn in on May 29, will come up with men and women who will be not the type of Alhaji Lai Mohammed, but the type that will face the reality. Let us have the truth as it is, work very assiduously and very strongly towards solving the huge problems facing Nigeria. I said that it is huge because every aspect of Nigerian life needs salvation. Every aspect, both social, economic, political, all aspects of our life need salvation. And I want to believe and hope that the incoming president will come up with a team that will be very, very auspicious and try as much as possible to lead Nigeria on the path of honesty, integrity, and respect for truth and decency, and not unnecessary, wholesome propaganda which Nigerians have been fed with in the past 8 years. Now, the labor man that you spoke to will allude to the fact and tell you that when they say 22% inflation rates, 22.4% inflation rate, what do you benchmark it? If you look at the benchmark and you now look at what happened between then and today, you can see that it is not even 22%. It is a lot more than that. And the most worrisome aspect of it is that food inflation is eating up every Nigerian. And I can tell you that when God made man, he left man with 3 basic necessities of life: food, clothing, and shelter. None of them is cheap in Nigeria. None of them is affordable, and none of them is easy to come by. And that is why the standard of living in Nigeria is going down on a daily basis. The consumer price index is going up, and inflation is galloping. We have come into the level of stagflation when it comes to food. It's an environment where a small ball of tomato is going for 50 naira. How do you explain that? So when you say it is 22%, it is laughable. These are mere statistics. ask the market woman or even the housewife that she will be the one to. In fact, the housewives are the best economists that we have today, because they will tell you what they see when they go to the market on a daily basis. And if nothing is done about it, meanwhile, the population is continuously on the increase, and the challenges are not abating. So we want to see a new government that will face the realities in an environment where the minimum wage is 30,000 naira, that can virtually buy not up to a bag of rice. The minimum wage, you pay a man a 30,000 naira, and he cannot buy a bag of rice with that money. So it is a very unrealistic economy that we run. So many things will need to be changed. So many things, even without being told.
All right, barrister. But here is a scenario. All right, here is a scenario.
It's nothing to write home about.
All right, barrister. So one would think that, like you've just reeled out the reality on ground, this current administration's tripod was really, honestly, one of the things that he mentioned when he came in, especially in 2015. We knew how rampant insecurity was, all right? And of course, at the time too, there was also inflation, the idea of having to revitalize the economy and, divest in terms of looking for alternative means of generating income beyond oil. Now, this administration, the administration of President Muhammad Buhari, based its campaign strategy and promises on economic resuscitation, fighting insecurity, and of course the number one of it in that tripod was fighting corruption in its entirety. And that was one of the reasons why a lot of Nigerians were like, okay, fine, the People's Democratic Party has ruled us for 16 years. We've seen brazen attempts at corruption. We're not seeing anything being done about it. Possibly because of the military regime of President Muhammadu Buhari, there's a tendency that corruption will be flawed. But then he came on board, and we saw that it took the light of the day. It swept the entire Nigerian system. Most cases that we thought we would see the end of it, we did not hear anything at the end of the day. It actually seemed like some political elects were being handpicked and being, they were sought after just because possibly they were not in the favorable camp. And we saw a couple of issues like this. We saw unemployment rise from 31 or 33 point something percent to 37. The labor market has become saturated with a lot of unemployed youth who are actually looking for jobs. We saw the Trader Money initiative come up, where they were going to try to help talk to. It was going to be an initiative that was going to help a lot of Nigerians get into the scheme, start their entrepreneurship skills, and possibly begin to make profit, whereby they could remit their profit. But we do not know, one is telling us, giving us a detail or an update of how that went by. Now, this administration on May 29 will definitely be dropping off. We also experienced infractions that took place, during the elections. One would think that the ministers in this current administration would try as much as possible to soothe the nerves of Nigerians, considering the fact that the polity is tense, seeing that people are actually hungry and going through a lot. Insecurity has gotten on the rise. See the Benue killings, see the Plateau State killings. One would think they will stop making inciting statements like this. But we have the Minister of Information always coming to reverberate things and, source out the agitations that a lot of people have been actually having concerning the post-elections. Is it wrong for those who were not happy with how the elections went on to go to the Election Petition Tribunal? I mean, that was the first thing they asked them to do. Why asking them to stop saying anything because they lost, while telling them not to bother by anything and accept how things went? If they're not comfortable, if they have their evidence, that's the question that we're asking ourselves. Why wouldn't the administration or the officials in this administration look for a way to soothe the frayed nerves of Nigerians?
Well, they feel that they don't have anything to lose anymore. After all, the administration is winding down. It has less than 1 month, strictly speaking, or give and take about 4 weeks to wind down completely. So they feel they have nothing to lose if they become humble. They also have nothing to gain if they become arrogant. And then Nigerians are now seeing what can be called administrative and political arrogance in the statement by some of the officials, trying to ramp it down the throats of Nigerians that they have done very well. But I can tell you that from all indices, the three major tripods upon which the administration of President Mohammed Buhari came into power, economic revitalization and anti-corruption fight and security, the government has completely failed in all of that. Well, I wouldn't say completely, but the government has not done enough. They have not lived up to the expectations of, or even, they have not even met their own expectation in those regards, not talk of the expectation of Nigeria. But because of the nature of administrative arrogance that we see in Nigeria, they do not want to admit their failures. It is left for Nigerians to assess them. Nobody sets an exam and marks by himself. It is another person that will mark such an exam, set by another person. That is the standard world over. It is left to Nigerians to assess this government. Nigerians know when they have been well treated. And the Nigerians know that this government has been very low on the respect for human rights and rule of law. And all those things have added up to drive away foreign direct investments, and coupled with some of the terrible economic policies of the government. So the government at a point can be regarded as being confused because some of their policies they did not even understand. And you see the economy being rudderless as if it was on autopilot. But like I said, that it is hopeful. We are being hopeful that at least on May 29, they will go. Let them go with their pride, which Nigerians have seen to be empty pride. You cannot claim that you have done well when the people you are serving are saying you have not done well. And even the last aspect, which Nigerians suspected that they will bequeath an electoral process that will be top-notch, according to the promises of Muhammad Buhari. For whatever it is worth, the perception is what is very important in this regard. I have always maintained that irrespective of how well a process is, the perception is very important. How do people perceive it? What is the impression of the people and the observers? Are they happy with the process? Are they okay? The avalanche of cases all around our tribunals and courts will tell you that the perception is not what Nigerians expected. But like we always say, we are now looking up to the judiciary to do the needful. But most importantly, I must always say this. Nigerians must know that irrespective of the failings, the human failings and frailties of our leaders, we must ensure that we maintain a country that has peace and tranquility. Cases of places like Sudan and some other places where internal strife has led to termination of lives in very unnecessary manner, we must know that it behooves on all of us to put our hands together, all hands on deck, to ensure that Nigeria remains a united country where respect for rule of law will be uppermost and people will be happy generally. Thank God that we are going to have a change of government. And at this point, much as it is the same party that is coming back, but it does not matter. The dynamics will change because the driver on the driving seat will change.
All right.
The one that is going has no private sector background.
All right.
All he knows is public sector. But the man that is coming has huge private sector background, and we believe that that will be deployed towards making Nigeria better.
Thank you very much, Barrister Fred Nsako, for your input on the world news at 12 this beautiful May Day holiday.
Many thanks.
Thank you. Instead of the world news, some stories outside the shores of Nigeria, Russia has launched a series of missiles at Ukrainian cities in the second pre-dawn attack in 3 days. A logistics hub in Pavlohar near the central city of Dnipro was hit ahead of a much-anticipated counter-offensive by Ukraine. The strike sparked a major fire, destroyed dozens of houses, and wounded 34 people. Hours later, the air raid alert sounded across the country, with the capital Kiev among the targets. Across the country, the Ukrainian army said it shot down 15 of the 18 cruise missiles that had been fired. The most significant damage was in Pavlograd, a city in Ukrainian-held territory around 70 miles, which is 110 kilometers from the front line. One resident also stated that the houses where they were smashed out by the explosion wave. To wrap up the world news at 12, here are the major stories. You heard that workers lament hardships, score President Buhari governor's law on welfare. Bandits kill 40 in Kebbi's and Far states. Federal government disclose oppositions are sore losers. Don't compromise, and also cautions election petition tribunal. And on the foreign scene, Russia launches second pre-dawn missile attack in 3 days. That is a wrap on the world news at 12 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Esther Wachuku. Good afternoon. Thank you for listening. Up next is Matters with Ikami Jude.